Thank you so much. Public comments, any?
No comments.
All right, cool. Agenda review? Anybody? Deletion, old items? Nope. Acknowledgement? And presentation. Oath of office. Who's gonna do this?
Me.
Of course. Okay. Let's do it.
I'm the only one legally.
Don't
The only
rush.
one legally
Don't
allowed
rush.
to do it.
I will not rush.
Please.
I mean, I can't do it.
All right.
I state your name.
I, Louis Vella,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear the true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
and
to
allegiance
the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will take this obligation freely
that I will take this on freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservations
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well
and that I will well
and faithfully discharge
and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which
the duties upon which
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. All right, cool. All right, so now I'm official. Next. Consent calendar. Approval of the minutes and approval of the expenditure from April 1st to April 30th. Any questions on consent? Do I hear a motion?
I also move.
Okay,
I'll second.
second, I have a motion and a second. I want to take a roll call, right? Is that correct? Oh,
Correct.
please go ahead.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes?
President Wheeler,
yes,
Okay, hearing and appeals? None?
None.
Okay, item 7, capital improvement program. Consider resolution 2025-13. General manager?
That's
Right on
Or-
Yeah.
Yeah, so staff recommending the board approve resolution 2025-13. It's a contract, a professional service contract with ZFA Structural Engineering. It's for the Dakota tank replacement project. You know, back in 2016, we did a structural engineering analysis of those tanks and also the tanks for Hallmark. And at that time, the analysis showed that the Dakota tanks, they were the oldest, still are the oldest in the system, were structurally deficient when they were designed and built back in 1952. They are up to code, but as time's gone on, we've learned a lot more about the dynamics related to ground movement and so on. And so the structural engineer recommended several options, and at that time, the board decided after weighing those options that it'd probably just be best to take those tanks down and replace them with new tanks. So that's the approach we took. We started working on plan specifications. At the time, we hired a structural engineer, Baez and Patel, to assist or coordinate work with PACPOR, with Jubin's office to do the engineering for that project. In 2021, we bid that project. We had an estimate to replace those two tanks. Right now, there's about 1.7 million gallons of water stored in two different tanks. We were gonna build similarly sized tanks, might be a little bit different, but not much. And when we got the bids back in July, early July of 2021, the lowest estimate, we only had two bidders, or the lowest proposal, I'm sorry, of the two proposers was like 28 to 30% more than the engineer's estimate. So at the time, we recommended to the board that they reject the bids and maybe we take a look at some other ways of constructing tanks. So Jubin's office studied it for a little while, came back and found out there really wasn't going to be anything less expensive or more economical to build. And by that time, we're still underway with our capital improvement program and starting to use up all the money. So this project, knowing it was going to be in excess of $5 million to construct, we just said, okay, we're just going to wait to see if we get future funding from the board to do some major capital improvements. We did, right? The board just sold the certificates of participation. So now this project's back out there and we want to get it constructed. So in order to do that, we've got to take another look at those plans and we need to hire a structural engineer to take a look at the work that's been done The contract is for $66,000 and it's really gonna have, ZFA take a look at the footing and foundation for the tanks. They're gonna be taking a look at a proposed, building that's gonna be put out there for chemical feed. We're gonna be looking to add chemical feed to the water there, basically a disinfectant. We found, over time that we tend to lose our disinfectant levels there in Tacoma for some reason earlier than any other place. So we thought we'd try it and, have the ability to add disinfectants there. So, they're gonna take a look at the footing for that building. They're also gonna take a look at the footings for the existing pump station and generator station there. And then also there's a hydropneumatic tank. So there's a pressure tank there that provides pressure to the people who live right near the tank. If we didn't do that, the only water pressure they would have would be based on the height of the water level in the tank, and it wouldn't be enough. We'd be getting a lot of complaints about low pressure. So this hydropneumatic tank that sits out there, it provides 50, 60 pounds of pressure to it. So we're gonna take a look at that as well. So this contract is, like I said, for $66,000. ZFA, they've been working with Jubin's office, and Jubin's got a pretty good comfort that they can do the job. So we're asking the board to approve this contract.
Brenda, if I can add just a couple of items, thanks for covering all of that. Between the last time we went out to bid on this project and now, the structural engineer of record, which Rena mentioned, Baez and Patel, actually went out of business. So they're no longer in existence, which is a reason that we ended up having to hire a new structural engineer to take over as structural engineer of record. So that little nuance, I wanted to make sure we'd mentioned that to the board in the past, if you recall, in our reports, but I think that's important to mention again. And then the other item that ZFA or the structural engineer will do is bring up the design drawings up to current code. The codes have changed since 2021 when the tank was designed, so we're just bringing it up also to the current standards before they go out to bid again. So just wanted to mention those couple items. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jubin and Rena, did anybody try to find out why the difference was so high? You have the 28% from the engineer's estimate to them, is because
back when it was originally bid in 2021, we were coming out right out of COVID. And what had happened was there was consolidation in the tank construction industry. Several of the contractors that were doing work in the steel tank arena had either gone out of business or consolidated with other companies. So we ended up with only two companies that bid the job. Now there is a third company that has come into the California arena. So when we go out to bid, we will make sure that we reach out to everybody that can bid this job. The other thing that we did, Lewis, was between then and now, so we had this pot of money, we ended up spending it on other capital projects, right? Like, so it didn't go out to waste, but we didn't have enough money for this project. The other thing we did between then and now was we looked at other types of material to be used for this tank construction. So it's welded steel tank now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be welded steel. So we looked at concrete, pre-stressed concrete, and we also looked at bolted steel. And realistically, for this type of construction, where it's at and the height and the geographical footprint, after meeting with those contractors that provide that kind of service, we found that what we have, which is the welded steel, is the best option. So I know that's a long answer to your question, but I think I answered it plus some, hopefully.
Yeah. Good. Okay, any more questions? Anybody? Hearing none? Do I hear a motion to approve? This is for 66, not.
I'll move to approve.
Okay, so I have a motion by Director Zuka, second.
Second.
Second by Director Covington.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Sorry,
Perfect.
yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, next item, receive update on Folder Drive. This will be a verbal report, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Fund in entitlements.
So at the last board meeting, we reported that we had a successful planning commission hearing where the planning commission recommended to city council to approve the rezoning of our property from residential to commercial.
Right.
Couple weeks,
Public space.
yeah, sorry, not commercial,
Public
yeah, public
facility.
space, public service, whatever, yeah, sorry. But,
Residential to public space.
yeah, which is, conforming with the use that we want and have been using the site for about 85 years. Well, a couple weeks ago, I got a fun panicked phone call at 6:30 at night from Carlos. Community Service Development, so they realized there is a nuance in state law that says if you take, in this case, 2 residential parcels and convert them to something non-residential, you have to, within the city, convert 2 other parcels to residential. And it can't be looking back at something you've already done. It can't be looking ahead at something that you plan to do in the future. It has to be, you're doing it now, you gotta do both now. And they didn't have parcels that they're converting right now. So what we had gotten approved just was not going to work. So they brainstormed a bunch of different solutions. They are committed to moving our project forward. And what they landed, they looked closely at how far off from conforming to the residential standards is our project. As one bit. And so if they look at the entirety of our property, we could build to the max residential square footage, which is 4,500 square feet. So that would be the existing building plus the new building, 4,500 square feet. And we're a big enough site, that would be fine. Our building, as we submitted in our plans, was 4,516 square feet. I said, shave off 16 feet, that's fine, we'll get rid of 16 square feet. And the new building, as being a single story, had to be below 15 feet in height. And what we had proposed was 17 feet. We confirmed we didn't need those 2 feet. We can, with a 15-foot, it was just the slant of the roof with a 15-foot roof. We can still have the garage door we need, the rope door, we can still have the crane we need and all of that. So it's no problem. We'll shave 2 feet off the height. So with that, it's now conforming to residential size limits. So it would only then need a conditional use permit to say, yes, this use is allowed, which needs to be approved by the planning commission. They had said at that time, but what we needed to do is consolidate the 2 parcels into one so that it's, that square footage compared to 1 parcel and not 2. And so, and what the city conveyed to us is, and we talked to the county and they're not doing parcel consolidations. They're done with them for this fiscal year. They'll handle them next fiscal year. Loretta called up the city, or sorry, the county, and we talked them into getting the consolidation done within a couple of days. So our parcels have been consolidated. Didn't change what we own. They're just 1 parcel instead of 2 now. So that's all done, which is great. So what that means is now we're going to the planning commission again on June 3rd. Asking for approval of the conditional use permit. And once that's approved, there's a 10-day, appeals waiting permit. And so by June 13th, we'll have entitlements for the Folger Drive property. Just taking a second pass at planning commission. So the planning commissioners are supportive of this project. I don't think that should be an issue. If you recall, the only kind of issue and concern that came up was the neighbors were concerned that someday we'd have the ability to put a 45-foot building or tank on the property, and that's not allowed in a residential, so that should alleviate any of that concern. The only concern that they had is basically alleviated. So we'll be back at planning commission on the 3rd.
June 3rd.
Yep.
One question, and I might be misremembering this, but I thought the reason why the property that we own is residential is because the city made a mistake and recharacterized it when they shouldn't, and there's no way for them to just undo the mistake without calling into question this.
Well, the problem is that it's state law, and there's no provision in state law for oops, we made a mistake. It's just if you're changing the number, and not even square footage of parcel, number of parcels. So that's just not really feasible. There's another, they talked about adding some language in their code, which is more city council approval to say that, you know, government uses are allowed under residential use and maybe even some other, just because that would make sense to give flexibility for public services. But that would, and they said they're probably going to do that anyways, but that's a kind of a longer term. This is the fastest path forward. And in fact, this path forward is faster than the path we were already on, because it would have gone to city council, was the 13th.
Yeah.
And then there's a 30, and then it had to go to city council a second time, because it was an ordinance of 2 readings. And then I think there was a 30-day appeals wait, and then it would go to planning commission for the design review. With this process, we're done June 13th. They can issue the building permits as soon as they're content with the building permits after that. So, and then it's good. And this was actually the path we were on initially, and then they decided they didn't really want to do a conditional use permit because it would make more sense to rezone it.
Yeah.
So, it's taken a little while, but we're getting there.
Nice work with the county.
Yeah,
Yeah.
congratulations.
Well, yeah, you spoke to the gentleman there, a nice man, and he just said, you know, we typically don't do it at the end of the fiscal year because they just want to close out stuff, right? Let things just kind of settle before they start the new fiscal year. And I told him, look, you know, this is for an emergency operations center. We really need to get this thing going. He goes, okay, you know, this particular case, you know, we can work with you guys. And within a matter of a couple of days, it was done, you know, so yeah, it was really nice of him to do that for us. Nothing special, just talk to the guy, you know, it's nice of him to do it for us.
So by combining the 2 lots to one, it's still zoned as residential though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it also
But
takes.
you don't have property that big in that residential area, it's just.
You know, yeah, it's what, 27,000 plus square feet?
Yeah.
It's huge.
You can only put 4,400.
That's the absolute max, yeah,
4,500 square feet,
4,500 square feet.
which was what we originally wanted, 4516, right?
Yeah, it was so close.
And both the area and the height will have to be adjusted in order to,
They've already been adjusted in the plans. We resubmitted the plans with the adjusted, so it's all.
Yeah. So
legit, yeah, it was just a matter of moving the wall just a little bit. So
yeah.
it doesn't impact our use.
It'll be good. Know the difference anyway.
No, you won't. It's like taking the building's about 15 or 16 foot wide, so you're literally just taking a foot off of it.
All right, good. Anything else? All right, we'll move on to regular business agenda, receive summary report on preliminary draft, operating and capital budgets. Our manager,
Oh, well, James take it.
Yeah, moving right along through this agenda today, tonight. Okay, so we have met already with the finance committee meeting, back on April 17th, feels like 2 decades ago at this point. So much has happened since then. But, you know, went over kind of what we thought we needed for the next year, including, you know, revenues and expenditures. They gave it a blessing to bring it to the board. So overall, we're proposing a budget that has a $2.6 million surplus that then gets converted over to the capital reserves. That's gonna be used for pay-go capital accounts. Some of the highlights for the operating budget are the water revenues, both water and fixed system charges. We tied those directly to the water rates that were approved during the last excuse me. I did a city council meeting presentation last night, so now let me convert over to board of directors. So to the last board of directors meeting last month, so we tie those directly to it, and that also accounts for that 6-cent adjustment from SMPUC. So those all match dollar for dollar. The other highlight for revenues is interest revenues, because we do have a full ladder going into the next fiscal year. For just operating purposes, we are expecting revenues to be increased, interest revenues to be at about $1.1 million. This does take into account also the proceeds from the 2020, I have a typo on here, 2025 certificates of participation, not 2026. We already issued those. pardon that. But so that does take into account what we're estimating that we're gonna be receiving from the investments that we're having on that. So that, and we set those investments to be approximately the same yield that the bonds are at, so about 4%. The next highlighted number is salaries and benefits, $4.1 million. That does take into account the annual COLA increase that happens in August. This also considers the district as fully staffed, as well as some overlap time for the operations manager and a retiring administrative assistant. So it does take into account all those. Purchase water, also, we've tied directly to that, to our rate study, what we're estimating our usage was gonna be for the next year, as well as, you know, pulling that in the context of that 6-cent adjustment for the pass-through. So we did adjust that just a little bit from their water rate study, down to $6.6 million. And then debt service, that increased significantly this year because of the new COPs. So we're accounting for a full year's debt service, that's interest and principal for the 2025 COPs, and then just the ongoing principal and interest for the 2015 COPs. PAYGO capital projects. Of particular note, we have about $200,000 for capital assets. And the remaining amounts are for various projects. So the DNLO, Exborn, Hallmark North, West Belmont, those are all considered PAYGO. We discussed a number of those projects when we were discussing the financing, what projects we're gonna assign to which bucket. And these are the projects that we had identified to PAYGO. And then finally, we've identified $13.8 million for debt finance projects. The amounts that are budgeted here for the capital projects are what we're expecting to expend in the next fiscal year for those capital projects. It's not what the total project is going to be. So on my summary sheet for the capital project, I do have what the total project costs are for that. So I do want to just point out on the capital budget page, so I kind of going over high level on this, so on the next page. So we do have the total project amount, the total project budget, which I've also taken into account what we're expecting to spend in the current year. So those amounts, those two columns won't necessarily add up to the total project budget, because there's some projects that are gonna be going for several years. So there's gonna be more than 2 years included into those totals. So overall, we've got $20.4 million worth of capital projects. That's broken up between PAYGO and debt financing, and then again, $250,000 for capital assets. Get this short.
And I think, so this is the draft budget. There's a couple refinements.
Yeah, thank you. There are a couple, so we didn't have insurance numbers until Friday after we published the reports. So the insurance numbers we had been very conservative, and we had originally budgeted, excuse me, 80,000 for workers' comp. But when we got the quote back, it looks like it's gonna be more aligned with 68,000. So I'm changing that to 70, just to kind of round up to be more conservative. So there's a $10,000 savings. And that's actually $2,000 less than what we were expecting for the current year.
Yeah.
Huh?
You don't hear that often.
No, you don't. The principal or the vehicle insurance, vehicle and property insurance, general liability insurance. For the current year, we had budgeted 270,000. We've already paid it out for 269,000. The estimate is actually coming out to, we had estimated 297, which is in your packet. But when they came back, they said the general is gonna be 200,000, property is gonna be 61,000. So, our insurance is actually going down from 270 down to 261 for general vehicle, property insurance. The other change that we had was for building maintenance for approximately $1,000 a month. That was for the Bolger property.
No, Dairy Lane.
Or Dairy Lane property, thank you. So that's approximately $1,000 a month that we'll be paying for in the next fiscal year, so. Of those savings that we had, gonna add back $12,000 for that. And then the last one was, excuse me, copier machines that we were going to. Our expected cost for the next fiscal year is expected to be approximately $10,000. We had budgeted approximately $17,000, so there'll be a slight budget savings there. Which I just got that figure this afternoon, so.
Little
So
tweaks.
all good news for the tweaks, except for Rena's news about building cleaning, so.
So the general liability, we combined auto, trucks and the building all in one.
Yeah, general property, let me see if I can remember all the declarations, like E and O, general property, vehicle,
That's because it's like an
Cybersecurity.
umbrella on it or what?
cybersecurity's in there. All the good stuff is in there, yes.
Big risk pool.
Yeah, we're part of the Aqua JPI.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Nope, and we're signed up for everything.
They have it, we got it.
Yeah, I was surprised it didn't go up just because of the theft, and then what they paid us out, you know.
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
April theft. in
I was kind of surprised,
2024.
because I think that's the reason it was 270,000 for the current year,
Oh,
was because it went up during the current year.
Okay,
But now they're reevaluating the rates,
Yeah.
so,
And they're doing a lot of work to
yeah.
control
Yeah,
costs.
I'm surprised it's gonna go
There.
up because all insurances are going up.
Yeah, that's why I was super conservative with because I was estimating about 15% increase.
Yeah. so
which
I
is
was
what I've
expecting it to
seen,
be more.
And when they came back with the figures to us, I was like, wait, hold on.
We're not
Hold
gonna
on,
complain,
let me-
right?
Let me look at this in the morning
ready,
before I like.
excited.
Yeah, let me look at this in the morning to make sure my eyes aren't crossed
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so, yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
Good news.
Nice.
So this is just for your review, input, consideration, and then we'll bring it back, along with the appropriations limit in June.
Mhm. Yeah, so, President Wheeler and I saw this already at the finance, so we kind of had our comments built into this, so we saw it already, but if you guys have any input on it, this is the time to do it, and then we're gonna see it again when in.
Yeah, the last meeting in June, yeah, along with the appropriations limit.
All right. Anything else on this? All right, hearing none. Thank you. We'll move on to the annual report on vacancies, recruitment and retention.
That is me. So we have a new assembly bill, AB 2561, and it was put into place to make public the make it known to the public about the vacancies that public entities have in regards to their staffing issues, how we're retaining staff, also how we are recruiting staff. Fortunately for us, we don't have that issue for 2024. We're at 0. But usually what this bill is proposing is that if your staffing needs are meeting at 20% or higher, that they're wanting it to be a bigger presentation, a bigger public hearing, a bigger voice from your associations and your unions that are being able to present. So this staff report is just to show that we are going to have a public hearing, which will be at the next board meeting. And what I will be doing then is presenting kind of our retention efforts, also some of our recruitment efforts, as well as talking about any vacancies that we may have had in 2024, which are none. And just kind of showing that I did offer the association to come and speak on behalf of vacancies. Obviously, they said no, thank you, because we have none. But this will also be annual.
Good. Do we know why this was asked by the state?
Oh, yeah. Everybody's having a hard time filling vacancies.
Yeah.
Filling positions, and a lot of times the public just doesn't even actually know that they're not being able to fill positions. And so they're just trying to make it more visible, more transparent to the public. on why are positions not being filled? What are you doing to fill those positions? What are those efforts that you're putting forth? So they're just really wanting, making it transparent. I mean, everything's transparent in public entities already, our salaries, what our names are, things like that. So obviously, we're going to try and make it more transparent in what we're doing to actually retain staff and recruit staff.
I'll add a little more color commentary to that. It's a pro-union bill. There's a number of unions that think public agencies should be filling vacancies. And they don't like that there's funded and vacant positions sitting there. So it's,
Yes, but usually you fund, you have vacancies, then your OT budget will go up, so.
but you do need to make a motion to call a public hearing next month.
Kirk, do you have any comments? Cause please, how, if Kirk has any comment, what, does he raise a hand or
Talks into the mic.
You can just say something.
or just, so Kirk, feel free to jump in anytime, so.
No, we're going along fine. I'll let you know if I need to step in.
Okay, I just didn't want you to think that we're forgetting you, you're
Right.
our priority. All right, cool. So, good, any questions on this to Allison? So we need to make a motion now so that we can have a public hearing.
The next board meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion by Director Zuka,
One second.
second by Director Cudman on having the public hearing. So please roll call.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yes.
Vice President Bella,
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a public hearing, in the June meeting. Okay, next topic is to discuss the Happy Hydrant program to support city's 2026 centennial celebration.
Can I just say, I thought this topic was behind us.
No, never.
No,
We had successfully killed this topic several years ago.
yes, we have some history on that.
I've been learning about it.
Yeah.
So, Rena or,
So if you remember, actually in the 2x2 meeting, the city did mention happy
I do
hydrants
remember.
then, and we're like, sure, talk to us. Well, they reached out to Rena, and they want to do happy hydrants for the centennial next year. So maybe Rena can talk about what they're asking for and then the history of happy hydrants. The
Well,
happiest of
Yeah,
histories.
the happy hydrants, yeah. I mean, the happy hydrants go back to the centennial, right, 1976. The community got together and there was some kind of program that allowed homeowners to paint hydrants, in front of their homes if they happen to have one in there. So there were a lot, and we were just talking about this afternoon. I don't know how many there were, but there were quite a few. And a lot of fun, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, I mean, just people who were in the centennial. Over time, those hydrants had been, time to rotate them out, right? The district's hydrant, standard had changed, so we take them out and there would be pushback from the community. And we were just talking about that again, guys, some of the guys who've been here long enough, remember that when we were trying to replace a happy hydrant, the community come out and start complaining to the board, what are you doing? You're taking out my happy hydrant. Well, we're taking it out because we're putting a hydrant in there. They'll put out a fire because there's one there, you're out, that type of thing. And so,
you're gonna be happy.
we've got past that. And so right now at this moment at the courtyard there in Dairy Lane, there's like a couple dozen happy hydrants out that have been retired and have been replaced with a new hydrant
We
standard.
tried to give those to the historical society and they didn't want them.
Yeah.
We actually have a whole supply of them underneath our stairwell,
You
so
want more?
I'll talk to Carl tomorrow. That's a hard no.
Well, then about 6 or 7 years ago, this came up with the board, and at the time, a board member, Dave Warden, said he would take on the task of coming up with a, program, working with the staff to do it, and he left, and we really didn't do too much. So it just kind of went away for a little bit. But now with the centennial coming up, Bridget Shearer, who's the director for the Department of Parks and Recreation and Culture
Mhm.
reached out and just said, hey, we want to know if the district wouldn't mind if we went out there and painted some hydrant. You go, oh boy, well, we better have a chat with the board about this and see how they feel about it. And, do they want to actually, maybe give us some guidelines with, developing some sort of policy? I mean, at the time when we talked about it years ago, we talked about maybe there being a couple of corridors for these happy hydrants, the Ralston corridor, maybe the Alameda Pool Gus corridor, something like that, so you have some kind of control. And there may be some other ideas, and I don't think we have to have an answer per se tonight.
When you said
So
they go out and paint, who was the they or the we in that?
The-
City or anybody that, or what were they trying to do? Like
Toddlers.
toddlers?
Well, you remember,
I
we
mean, hey, if it's like, that, whatever that paint that comes off in the rain, have at it.
yeah,
we had a Boy Scout, remember, about 5 or 6 years ago, he
Yeah,
asked,
we did.
and
Yeah,
the board gave him
Hallmark.
permission to hallmark
Yeah,
the
we have a lot
Ralston.
of pictures of
Yeah.
that. He did a very good job though.
But I mean, what is, I guess I don't understand Belmont's request.
They want to be able to come up with a program, to celebrate centennial and just allow happy hydrants again to come out.
and they have said they wanna do it in major corridors like Ralston and
yeah.
Alameda. So I think our goal here, knowing that the board previously did some work to establish a policy, but it was never established. We have this request, we've had some struggles. We have some ideas, we've talked to staff about, kind of the struggles that we've had, so we just kind of wanna brainstorm, and our goal here is to take. Those thoughts, your experience, and staff will draft a policy and bring it back, in the next, meeting or two. For the board to consider, and then we'll have that policy, and we can say, okay, sure, we can do happy hydrants as long as it's conforming with our policy.
What are the issues? Cause I'm sensing
Yeah.
that there's not a
Well,
lot.
other than it won't go away.
Yeah,
I'll just, so it's not really that there's an issue, it's more that we ended up in a situation where there gets so much emotional attachment then to a painted hydrant. That when we need to replace it for just practical purposes of, we're doing a main replacement project and that hydrant no longer meets our standard. We end up in an emotional battle with a resident, right, over the hydrant. They love their hydrant, it's painted, it reminds them of their kids and whatever. And we're dealing with sort of municipal level infrastructure, so we're mixing two things. Again, I think it's great. But then if you want it, take the hydrant and put it in your backyard,
Yeah, in your
it's out, right, and we just never. It always ended up being a point of contention, it felt like, and I don't wanna say unnecessary, that's sort of in the eye of the beholder, but. It created more conflict than I think it created an attachment to something that is gonna inherently be replaced at some point. And that created a problem over time. And I think that's probably the best way to characterize it.
and there's another issue, because at some point we started color coding the caps of the hydrants based on
There
pressure.
was an NFPA requirement, yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so what do you do with a painted happy hydrant? So
where,
there's
when it has to have either a
workarounds.
green or a blue or an orange or a red cap.
Based on the
And then you're
fire flow
painting
that you
over it.
can get
Yeah.
from the hydrant. 'Cause some hydrants are connected to a 6-inch main, other are connected to an 8-inch main. And because of the color coding of the caps, you would know that that hydrant would give me like an 800 gallons a minute or 1,200 gallons a minute, which is not the same. And the other thing was that, if we were going to do it, which is when Dave Warden was involved in it, we wanted to do it where it was the most visible. So that's why we said Ralston and maybe Alameda. And the side street and the other street, I mean, they're not that visible, if you wanna make a point because of a anniversary of a date. So that was the reason for that. So then we had it on the agenda a few times, and the report was, I haven't started yet, so. And then it was time for him to leave and nothing happened, and it went dormant.
Got it.
And then we thought it was.
Yeah, without, and so this is really more a joke, like, you're kidding me, this is back.
So now,
There's a lot of things.
It's
planned for
alive.
the City
It's alive.
centennial.
I'm sure,
This
I'm
is-
sure.
so usually whoever makes the request has to come up with something else, They have a plan, who's going to do it, what's gonna happen afterwards. So I think that our response as a board, and please chime in anytime, is that we need to tell the city, okay, what is the plan? And then we'll look at the plan. And we're not gonna be here to design it, they have a plan, we'll look at it, if we like it, we'll go with it. If we don't, we'll tweak it or do whatever, you know.
I mean, I guess I would wanna know what they're trying to accomplish with the Centennial, like you said, is it just major corridors, do they wanna let all the neighborhoods? Paint it as a celebration, you know, cause that's gonna sort of dictate then.
Yeah, I hope they,
our response.
yeah, I hope that, speaking of that, I hope that they will include the neighborhood association. Because once you start getting to Ralston and Alameda, especially main corridors, you're not going to have the 2 or 3 houses that are excited about it, you know, because there isn't that many residential to begin with, or they are apartment buildings, apartment, you know, they don't care as much as people have a hydrant in front of their house, you know, so. So we're not gonna have that, but there are neighborhood associations, some are active, some are not very active, so. And hopefully those will be involved in the plan that the city hopefully will come up with.
My 2 cents would be for us to come up with a plan and basically tell them, here's the
This
deal.
is what we'll allow.
This is what we're allowed, and we'll start with, these are the types of hydrants that are going in. If we have to replace anything already, we will already have painted the caps, I'm assuming, on those. Do not touch the caps. This is how you paint the hydrant and whatever. Again, we put rules around this.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, knowing Bridget, she will make sure they follow it and do it right. And if we want to specifically say it's strictly for these corridors, no other areas are being entertained for this, for whatever reason. But these are what we feel is doable within the structure of the district. And tell us if you have any objections to any of this, and we'll come back and see if we can tweak any of it. But if you leave it up to them, it's gonna go in 100 directions, and it's gonna get squirrely, and time will go by, and then we'll end up in a compressed window to try to enact this. Trust me, there are people in this town that have been around a long time that remember those and have very fond memories of them. So it is an emotional issue for the city.
Absolutely.
And I think we can use that to our advantage to say, hey, we're all in. Here's where you can do
Yeah.
it. Here's the rules behind it. You guys tell us if you have any objections to what we're telling you, how it has to be. You know, you've seen them, obviously. They're painted like characters, like a fireman or a mailman or something. Or for the first one was the 50th anniversary of Belmont. So some were painted like pilgrims, or it doesn't matter. It's just somebody's art piece. So in the instructions on them, they need to be aware that this hydrant has the potential to be replaced at some time in the future at our decision. If you want the old one, you know, we'll give it to you. Otherwise, it's going to be removed and your
How did we
hydrant
decide
goes away.
the surplus of public on that one? I can't remember. There was an issue that we came up with, we can't just give it away.
No,
We had, cause
Just give it surplus,
there's a salvage, and we had the I can't remember, we had that
Cast
conversation.
iron, right?
Yeah, so I just looked at
recycle
our
them.
surplus policy, so if the original purchase price is 25,000 or more, it needs board approval.
Okay,
An individual hydrant is not putting.
no, but I just remember
So-
what our conclusion was when we were talking.
So if it's under 25, then this will, you know, it's been sold or whatever it is at GM.
Somebody's
dispatch.
scrap
So,
metal votes.
and yeah, we talked about the
Scrap
scrap
metal
cost
value.
and because it's cast iron, like you
There's no-
can't,
there's not really scrap.
we can't even get the, you know, not landfill, but recology to accept less than like a full dump truck load. So that's why we have them stored up at the yard. Just waiting because they just have so little value.
so last time when we talked about this, we had kind of a board of director liaison who was Dave Warden.
Right.
Should we have that? Board of directors who
I
would
mean-
be a liaison with,
I think staff comes up with, if we direct staff to come up with a plan that they think that they can support.
Yeah.
Along the lines of a corridor or whatever we think the constraints are. for what
I think that's what the general manager
We'll,
kept saying.
we'll write it up as a policy and we'll bring it back for review and adoption.
I think they honestly would appreciate guidance.
Yeah.
If you just leave it to them, they don't know what the hell
so
goes on.
Pat, if you don't mind, then at least make a contact with the fire marshal
Mhm.
in San Mateo. Because those caps, those are basically for their benefit. for fire department benefit.
I actually, the irony of this is, I literally had a meeting today with fire in Palo Alto, and we talked about hydrants for over an hour. You'd have loved it.
Maybe.
And you know, their comment, the fire marshal in Palo Alto's comment was, I don't care the color of the hydrant. Give me a dot in the middle of the road and I wanna see the cap. The rest of it was sort of, you know, that was Palo Alto,
At the
so,
bus stop, yeah, the blue dot.
yeah.
Yeah, but you know, nowadays, they all have GPSs
Mhm.
with exact location of the hydrants. We did away with those
You-
dots a long time
You
ago.
would think, well, okay, so maybe, but Palo Alto wanted them. I just don't know what the constraints are.
And they feel like, you know, it's on the map and you can
It's
see
right
it, because
there,
at night especially, it'll glow blue. And you know that the hydrant's gonna be either there or here. Yeah. as
So
you
that would
drive.
be the one thing too, is we're gonna start camouflaging yellow hydrants with paint. Now, we might wanna make sure we have dots in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do, we're good on that.
Those,
I was always
those
so
will have
confused,
to.
because I don't see dots in Redwood City, I was like, what are these dots for?
No, no,
We don't have them in Redwood City,
These GPS
but we are, that's part of
But
the.
in this case, yeah,
Everybody's
that's
all
what,
about
but in this case, you know, if those hydrants are going to be all colors. I would say that
Yeah.
dot should go there,
Yeah,
so that at least we can appease fire that, hey, we took away the. The illumination of the hydrant itself, but we gave it a dot, so at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
It will appear that we have thought about all the levels, you know, so.
yeah, I think that makes sense, yeah, we can set up a meeting for sure, and I think I have a lot of detail here that'll help us develop policy, so,
Okay,
awesome.
and if there are hydrants that are already in need of a replacement. Then they should be.
We should
that, hey,
identify
this gonna be gone in about 3 months, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I guess I don't wanna undertake the capital project to put new hydrants out so people can paint them.
Well, so it's more likely if we have any old hydrants in these areas, they don't get painted, so people don't get attached.
Yeah. Or, hey, that's gonna be available for surplus here very shortly.
Yeah.
Put it in your front yard.
Okay,
That works.
Excellent,
anything else? You have enough,
hydrants are so happy.
more than enough? Kirk, anything on hydrants?
No, I've got one on my street that probably should go away. It's an old one, but it's not that interesting, so I'm not sure anybody's attached to it.
Repaint it. Make it happy.
Yeah, you can repaint it as part of the centennial, Kirk.
Well, it's just painted white and it says Belmont on it, so it's not interesting.
It's happy.
Use a happy face.
Whatever,
Oh, it's
Okay.
only 15 minutes,
Wow.
I was curious.
really good, all right. We'll move on. Next item is to consider approval of the updated strategic plan, including director assignments. Yes, general manager.
So, in hard copy given to you tonight is the updated version of the staff report with the updated plan and a red line from the changes that have been made since Monday. So we've had a chance to flip through the changes made or what we discussed, and I also added a sentence or so to the introduction, little word tweaks here and there. But it's all consist, oh boy. Sorry, the red line, it did that weird thing where it turns
Mhm.
some of the text into just. I didn't notice that, but
You did-
It's a-
very-
it's fine,
you
it's
very
fine.
healthy discussion last Monday.
So.
On this.
yeah, Monday's meeting went very well. So if there's any further tweaks, we can talk about those, or if the board is happy, we can adopt it.
I had
Yes,
trouble
sure.
identifying what was in the red line because there seemed to be two copies and the terminology was a little bit different, but there was nothing to mark where changes had been made.
I'm sorry about that, Kirk. The first version that was loaded of the red line wasn't actually redlined. The version that's on the website now is redlined. It just,
Oh.
one of these things we PDF it and then it didn't actually do the thing you think through. It's doing. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, the blue line,
Blue line, just,
no red line.
you're not looking for red.
Do you have any comments on the context though? Kurt?
Well, I just
Oh,
confused as to which of the two versions that I've got is the one that we're proposing, because I guess I have to go back to the web page. I only
Well,
loaded
since-
it on Tuesday, but yeah, okay.
Since the version you're looking at isn't redlined, they should actually be the same. Cause it just PDF'd it without the red lines marked.
Okay, so what is the actual terminology for the we had questions about, you were going to put in new wording for the employee A5 and 6, was it? In section 1?
On 5 and 6, update rules for the board of directors, explore options for employee benefits to support.
Okay,
employee
there.
Yeah, that one didn't change, but we did add review and consider updating district's tuition reimbursement policy. And then under ongoing, we added continually assess if staffing levels are appropriate for the district's needs.
Okay,
so we have the promise that anything that we talked about or changed or commented on is included in a new version. The solemn promise.
right, but there were couples that we were going to wordsmith them, and that was what I was asking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
So those two were added to item 1. Or element 2, we tweaked the wording on B2-3 to continue to build relationships with local and state elected officials. Consider opportunities to engage federal representatives.
yes,
sounds good.
we changed the federal to consider.
Right.
Yeah,
And element 3, there were no changes. Element, perhaps elephant, I don't know. 4 and
in the new room.
4 and 5, no changes there either. And 6, I did triple confirm the dates, for the risk and resilience assessment and the emergency response plan. And added the specific day, because why not? And then the new item under project priorities, conduct a fire vulnerability assessment of district infrastructure.
Okay,
Those are the changes within the plan itself, and then director assignments. We just put Chuck on everything.
Yeah,
No, I took one.
Thank you, Joanne, for taking.
Yeah, so
okay,
Joanne is on the general manager support and performance evaluation, and Chuck is on Aqua JPIA, Harbor Industrial Association, and the 2x2.
okay,
So
good,
really minimal changes.
thank you.
all right. Anything else? Going once, good, motion to approve.
So move. Second.
And Director Zuka second. Roll call.
Director Cotton,
Yes.
Director Zuka,
Yes.
Director Covington,
Yeah,
Vice President Bella,
Yes,
President Relay.
Yes,
all right, move on to the BOSCA update. I highlighted a few things on the report, so I won't read the whole thing. So the BOSCA meeting was on May 15th, and we had the meeting, and it was a special meeting. Because we had the meeting at a different location than all the others were before. It was not in Birmingham, it was not in Foster City, it was not in that other place in Birmingham, one is the library, the other one. This was at Village of San Mateo.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because there's some issue with handicap accessibility because of the elevator in Foster City. But anyway, it's a long story. But we met at the College of San Mateo and we had it all also recorded and people could connect virtually and all that. So it was quite a ordeal to get it all together. Anyways, critical items for the board action included the approval of 13 professional services. As you know, BOSCA is basically, an agency that oversees or, negotiate with San Francisco PUC on behalf of all the agencies here, so that instead of SFPUC negotiating with each district and each water agency as they used to do in the very past, now we deal with BOSCOM for everybody. Which is much better this way because, we, as BOSCO, we present ourselves as much stronger, negotiators than each little district by themselves. And, so the 13, professional services contracts, that must be in place by July 1st. And then, we talked about the, strategy 2050. Water is obviously a critical commodity for life and the environment, but supplies are being impacted by climate change and drought. We've been lucky these last few years, but you always, when you have strategy 2050, we all know that you can have 2 years of drought and 3 years of drought and even 4 years of drought. And that is basically what we need to plan for, certain in those things. To do that, though, what you're gonna have to do is sometimes when we have, and we'll go over this later on, when we have the reservoirs full, like they are now, and you have the runoffs, guess what? You're gonna have to release water to make room for the new water that's coming from the mountains into the tributaries and into the rivers. So, we also have a board policy committee. And the board policy committee is a smaller committee of the 26 agencies. We have a smaller committee made up of a few of about 40% of the entire board, so that when we talk about the nuts and bolts of each item, we don't have to go in front of the entire board because it will be too unwieldy. So we have a smaller board that goes into and discusses the agenda before we bring it up to the big board. And they meet in the alternate months. So with the board policy committee, the proposal for fiscal year 2025-26 work plan, discuss that and the results to achieve and options to fund the proposed operating budget was presented to the committee for discussion and feedback to the general manager. The committee was also presented with the strategy 2050 risk assessment and scenario planning. Then we had the consent calendar, which was the obviously the approval of the minutes, the approval of the budget status report. We had a report on the bond surcharge, investment report, director's reimbursement, and employee reimbursement. Those were on the consent. Then we had the report from the San Francisco PUC, and Allison Castama did the report from SFPUC. And she reported that the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission adopted the water supply agreement and the minimum purchase agreement, as well as the 2.3% wholesale water rate increase in its meeting on Tuesday, May 13th. So San Francisco is raising the wholesale water charges by 2.3%. Which we kind of guessed it was gonna be hovering about that, right?
Yeah, that's what we knew and that's what we included in our own.
Projections. Yeah, which is something else. Sometimes we get surprised by San Francisco. You know, they say one thing and then something else happens. But this time, I think we were. spot on.
Yeah, usually by the time the staff says, well, I guess every time by the time the staff says, this is what we're recommending to the commission hasn't changed, and so we have a lot of certainty at that point. It's
Good.
earlier in the process where things.
On the water capacity, which Rena, I know we'll be talking about later on, to date, the current reservoir storage is full. So as snowmelt occurs, water is being released from the O'Shaughnessy Dam, which is the Hetch Hetchy, to match the natural flows. Natural flow from the mountain goes into the Hetch Hetchy, so you have to release ahead of time, otherwise you're gonna have the overflow. So across the state, water supply conditions are good, with levels of reservoirs at higher than historical averages. Precipitation upcountry and in the Bay Area are at median. System deliveries are at 213 million gallons per day, which is above the 5-year average. The increased usage is typical for the month of April. As temperature increases, now we're going to see a little bit of higher usage of water. All right, so then the general manager presented the 13 professional services contract that needed to be placed by July 1st. And then the board did vote to approve all 13 professional services contracts. And then we talked about the pay schedule for the employees of Bosca. There's been no raises except for one position, which was below market by about 3.5%, and we brought it to market. And that was it on that. And the CEO reported that Bosca continues to work closely with the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission in tracking and engaging with the State Water Board's effort on the Bay Delta Plan. And then the general manager concluded that he was pleased to report that the packet materials for the water supply agreement amended and the Tier 2 plan are available for the members' agency use in their governing bodies. Adoption by all 26 member agency are expected in the next 6 months. And that was it. And then you had the meeting with the water managers or Rena?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so, yeah, they did provide the tier 2 and minimum purchase agreement materials, so that's great. We plan to bring those to the board next month for adoption. They want to get as many agencies to adopt as possible. The idea being as many or as quickly as possible, because, you know, if they can say we've got 50% of agencies or 50% of at least the supply represented, they're hoping to get San Francisco to pull back on their minimum purchase, the fees. You know, Mountain View just got their estimated fees for not using water. So they're gonna have to pay about $3 million for not using water, which is what this amendment is supposed to be. So,
They
it's
signed the
what
contract.
I don't sign the contract, but it's.
I mean, Elizabeth,
Overall.
shoot me if you heard me say that, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's it's to everyone's overall benefit, I believe, to adopt these, so.
I mean, it has to be unanimous, so otherwise we send the whole thing back to negotiations, so.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be the one board that decides not to, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No way.
Good reason.
think
So
so.
we will bring that, we have brought these to the finance committee, so Lewis and Kirk have gone through in more detail. And one thing Bosca did offer is, you know, any additional meetings, any support they can, give it, and so we thought it would be a good idea. For, you know, the new directors, Director Covington and Cotton, to actually meet Tom Schmagel. So he's offered to do that in the evening, make it easy.
I've never met Tom,
by
I'd
Zoom.
like to meet him,
I'll make 3.
Yeah.
We wanna-
you know,
And to get a background and history of Bosca and just
so
kind of
I've got,
understand
but I
their
just, I've
role
never
and
met
all that.
Tom,
You should meet Tom. He's.
Yeah,
he's-
I can meet, I can
yeah.
also introduce myself at some
You
point.
was here a couple times.
Yeah, and you know, and we could have someone from Bosca here for the June meeting, if we want to take their time to present the materials, or we can handle it ourselves. So if there's a preference, we could ask their staff here.
I don't think we need to drag
Yeah.
this. We,
But
like, we have,
deal
this
with
is
what
almost a rubber
continues.
stamp thing, and it's almost more informational.
Yeah, we spent like a year and a half, 2 years
Yeah.
going through these things.
Yeah.
So that was one, you know, the major thing we talked about at the WMR meeting. Also went into
the demand study, so I mentioned the consultant, Hazen and Sawyer, working on behalf of Bosco's demand study for each agency. So that we're all estimating our demand in a uniform or, using a consistent methodology. And then we have the option of adopting those demand estimates in our own urban water management plans. Some entities like Cal Water like to use their own method, but at least for purposes of what, gets presented to SFPUC is the collective demand, we're using that methodology. So we, talk some of the specifics and assumptions and kind of process, on where we are in that. Everything seems to be moving along well. And then the other thing that happened was, it feels like the longest week in the world, was it yesterday or the day before? Bosca held a stakeholder meeting related to Strategy 2050. Where the Strategy 2050 is their long-term supply planning effort. Where they invited, the typical, the member agencies, but other stakeholders as well, like CCAG, the stormwater folks for the county. The sanitary districts, Silicon Valley Clean Water was there, West Bay was there. And also the nonprofit environmental groups like Tuolumne River Trust was there, some other educational. And it was,
Always there.
everyone is part of their roundtable stakeholder process, so they brought everyone together for a 4-hour meeting to go through the process and to brainstorm and talk about projects and management action. So that outreach was done. I attended that as well as Drew, who represented the district. And
Good,
shared, so it was good.
actually, you can expose them to that. Yeah, and also the Tuolumne River Trust are present in every single meeting, and they speak at every single meeting. On most of the topics. And speaking of having a presentation from Bosca for the 2050 strategic plan, we had Andre from EKI, who came and spoke a little bit about the different scenarios of planning approaches for 2050 strategy, so it's good. Yeah. All right, cool. Good, so we'll move on to Rennes.
Yeah. The regional water system is going on. So Allison will bring up the US map and really the two maps, the US map and the California map. I was just looking at the previous last 2 months. They really haven't changed at all. There hasn't been any significant increase in the size of the drought areas throughout the United States and or in California. The only thing really showed up in the United States map is down there in Florida. They've got a couple areas of some extreme drought conditions showing up that hadn't been there in the past, but that's really about it. So I won't spend any time. So let's go on to the reservoir chart there, the next one, Allison. As Lewis was saying, the reservoirs that throughout California, the major ones are all full. And of course, right now, as temperatures warming up, the snow's melting, it's filling up the reservoirs, but we're about ready to get into the water season when a lot of the agriculture throughout the state is just gonna start drawing down these levels. But throughout the entire winter and last year and even the last couple of years, the reservoir levels, the major ones throughout California have been at pretty good levels, at least a historic average, if not more than that. And that's what this is kind of showing. So that's good. And that's what Lewis said that he heard at Bosco. And in terms of the rain picture for California, is taking a look at that. We're starting to get into that period of the year where we're going to get less and less rain. But what's interesting here, compare the middle column to talk about what's been going on since July 1, 2024 through current, and then next over in the green and orange area, that's a year ago, right? A year ago, pretty much all of California, the rainfall through, this period of time in the first week of May, well over 100% of normal. This year, everything's less than 100%. And especially going to Southern California, I mean, it's really, they've had very little rain down there. So that to me is the most interesting picture here. But yet again, we're carrying over a lot of water in our reservoirs, and at least is what San Francisco is telling us is we're not anticipating any kind of water, asking people to conserve water, and I don't think that the same can be said for the state water system and the Central Valley project for the Valley farmers. They always tell them that they're not going to get their full supply. There's always something going on there, but something can be attributed to just not as much rain falling. The next slide is just the precipitation outlook. This is from NOAA, so we'll see how long these continue to be available. Basically saying for the months of June, July, and August, you know, at least in our part of the US and in California, there's equal chances of getting either normal precipitation or not, you know, so, okay, an average rain year, it looks like. The next slide happens to be for temperature. This one is different, you know, it looks like they're predicting for June, July, and August that the temperatures in our part of the United States are gonna be above average. You know, so we can expect warmer, so we'll see what kind of effects that has on the drought conditions throughout the state, you know, that we're drying out because it's gonna be warmer and not as much rain. With respect to precipitation in the upcountries, as Lewis was mentioning, this chart from San Francisco does a really nice job of showing that black line is that 30-year median. This is what it's looked like over the last 30 years. And so you can see that nice bright red line, which is 2025. The precipitation ahead actually has just been kind of following the 30-year average all season long, you know, and slightly ahead of 2024 is that green dotted line right below the red line. So the last couple of years, the rainfall up, at least in the Hetch has been very similar and just slightly below the historic average, 30-year average. Next slide is upcountry bar chart precipitation index. And so right now, what this bar chart shows is if we have a 12-month median total of about 31 inches right now with the 28.5 inches, we're about 92% of that median. And we're starting to get into the period of the year where we just don't get much rain. So I'd be surprised if we get to 31 inches up in the upcountry, but that's okay because the reservoirs are full. But if this continues, then, you know, we'll start pulling from those reservoirs and the water levels will be going down and the drought conditions will start exacerbating conditions throughout the state. Bay Area wise, same thing, that 12-month median average, you know, about 23.5 inches. Well, we're almost there. We're about an inch below. So we're about 96% of that 12-month median. Again, we're getting into the period of the year where we don't get a lot of rain. So I don't think we're going to hit quite to 23.5 inches. I'd be surprised. Haven't seen any rain so far. Through usually, you know, if you see the chart there, the bar for May is about half an inch of rain, and I don't think we've received any this month. Snowpack is the next one, and again, kind of similar to the Hetch precipitation. The black is the 30-year median, and then the red is what took place this year. And then what's interesting is the blue dot is what happened last year. So you can see the 2025 has just always been below the 30-year average. But 2024 is kind of similar, but then in 2024, we had a really good snow fall in April, March and April. This year really didn't come to fruition, haven't had much. And so now we're on the downhill side as the snow is melting in the Sierras and Hetch and starting to fill the reservoirs, but you know, not as much snow this year as we've had in past years. But again, we're in good shape. Our reservoirs are full throughout the state. And so that's what this chart is all about, the reservoirs and the regional water system. You know, currently, total between the Tuolumne system and the local reservoirs, we're at 1.33 million acre feet of water stored. Compared to last month, it's up about 35,000 acre feet. Compared to last year, it's very similar. And then if you go back a couple of years ago, you know, we're about 100,000 acre feet more than we were a couple of years ago. But again, as Lewis mentioned, the report from San Francisco, we're sitting pretty good. We're at 90% full, you know, looking really good going into the water season. Now let's take a look at deliveries, and Lewis mentioned this, that the deliveries in the regional system now are starting to exceed 200 million gallons a day. It's actually ahead of where it's been the last couple of years. You know, we're starting to use more water, and we're seeing that. You're going to see that in the next chart, that even in the community here, you know, people are just using more water. Right now, regionally, it's ahead of the 5-year average in terms of the daily deliveries, and again, ahead of every year that's on this chart. For us locally, the next one in the district, you know, kind of mirrors the regional one. Our 2025 water use is up about 23-24, a little bit below the 2022, but just up above. But of course, nowhere near the 2013. You know, Matt and Lewis will remember that was a really high year. That was probably our last large water use year in the community here. And since then, you know, we've had a couple of droughts and the folks here in the community have gotten really good about, using water wisely. It's reflected in, you know, the volumes, but even so, we're seeing an uptick in use in the community. And the second to last slide is just the cumulative, use of water. We're just kind of, charting that. So we're about 3% below that blue 5-year average. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the year, you know, we get above that 5-year average, because right now we're showing that we're using more water. In fact, it'll be interesting to see once we get May's data, how much water we used in May. And then if it puts that green line above the blue line, I wouldn't be surprised, because it looks like the community's used a little bit more water. And then the last slide is just fire potential. Again, a map that I found, because we've all had some interest in fires here in California and now other parts of the country. So this map is, again, it was looking at the fire potential in the middle of May. And so the effects of, you know, winter and spring are still showing low risk for most of the United States, though there were some pockets of maybe slightly higher risk in the middle of the country, northern half, and then in the southwest, and like Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. What's interesting is the little bit higher risk you see in the very top northeast corner up there in Maine and Vermont and so on, and then very bottom in Florida. And I bet the one in Florida is kind of related to the drought as well. They're having some extreme drought effects in southern Florida. But anyways, that's the regional picture. So overall, you know, we're looking really good in terms of water stored, but we're also seeing an increase in water use by folks throughout the region and in our community here.
All right, very good. Thanks, Rena.
Yeah.
Any questions, Rena? All right. Move on to district treasurer.
Yeah, moving right along. Nice job.
Financial report.
So, excuse me. Net surplus for the month that ended, or for the year ended April 30th, 10 months, year ended April 30th. We are at about 84% of our total revenue collection, which is right on target of 83% is what we're expecting at this point. And our expenditures are actually running a little bit lighter at 79%. Now, that doesn't account for, we've got a debt service payment coming up in June. So that tends to skew things just a little bit for those expenditures, but that's kind of the big thing that's
Yeah,
lingering
but
out there.
who are the 83% expenditures? That service will still come to anyway, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're a little bit.
So it'll still line up, yeah. And so we're expecting to be at 100% by the end of June. So of both revenues and expenditures,
Okay.
so. Key highlights is water commodity charges are about $1.4 million higher than it was at this time last year. We are at about 79% as of the year, but that's typical for April. So we are, as Brenda mentioned, we're getting to higher usage months, so May and June will be driving more revenues coming from commodity charges. Fixed system charges were at about 87%, and it's 385,000 higher than it was last year. At this time, the offset, of course, is payroll, which is about 475,000 higher than it was at this point last year, because now we're fully staffed. We did have a few months of overlap for a couple positions, so that's well within tolerable range. Purchase waters, 587,000 higher than it was at this time last year. And that's just timing of when we make the payments versus, when we get the invoice and make the payments for that, so. Those are the key highlights from the operating budget. Again, we're about 3.1, running higher than about $3.1 million surplus, which then gets transferred over to the remaining amount gets transferred over to the capital reserve to be used for the PAYGO projects. Overall results, we're 542,000 higher than we were at this time last year, as far as operating results. Capital budget, we've spent 303,000 on capital assets, trucks, surveillance equipment, valve turner. We've spent almost $900,000 on PAYGO projects so far to date. And that's part, part of it's the Old Country Road improvements as well as, a little bit left over from Harbor Boulevard. And then we do have some debt financing expenditures that we've made of about 355. We are gonna work on getting a requisition going so we can draw down those funds from the debt financing that we currently have in the accounts that we now have. So we'll be able, so the district will be made full for in the operating cash accounts here shortly. Finally, the reserve analysis. For the reserves, we're fully funded right now for working capital, for our capital reserve, for our section 115 trust for both pension and OPEB. We're about 10% funded for rate stabilization reserves. The capital reserve, as you saw with the budget, we're expecting to just wipe that out with capital projects going to be starting up in the next subsequent year. So I did add a category, two categories in here, one category in here for project funding, so you can see what amounts we have as at the end of the month that's still in the project account to be used to draw down for capital expenditures. So yeah, those are the results of the financial results for the month of April. High level. Questions,
Very good.
comments?
Yeah, we saw this in the finance committee as well. So. Any questions? We're good? Kirk, anything?
No, it hadn't changed much since last time, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it changed a little bit because of time.
the numbers just grow just a little bit, but. About 7.5% per month. So,
Very good. All right, thank you. Hearing none, we'll move on. District engineer,
Hello, good evening. I have to apologize, I'm not there in person. I'm recovering from a bad case of bronchitis, but still have a nagging cough. But our report, we're working on 6 projects, active, 5 projects actively. The DLNO is the next project to go out to construction. We have a pre-construction meeting set up for next Wednesday with the contractor. We're really pushing the contractor to start as soon as possible. We have some funds obviously in the bank that we want to spend and get pipe in the ground. So the contractor has not submitted their schedule yet, but we do have submittals that have come in and we're reviewing those. And so hopefully by the June meeting, we'll be able to report out that either have broken ground or are very close to breaking ground on that project. On the West Belmont Exborn and Hallmark tanks, the design is proceeding. The design of Exborn and West Belmont are complete. Hallmark was an add-on project, if you recall, a couple of months ago that came to the board, and now it's packaged together. The geotechnical engineer is out there. It will be out there shortly to do their borings, and the topographic survey is complete. So design continues. We're on schedule to go out to bid for that project. Excuse me, winter of this year. So we want to do these projects, these tank projects during the winter where their fire demand is low. We don't want to be taking tanks out of service during the summer months, obviously. So State Route 101 project, we have had some really good discussions with the designer, Wes Yost and Tanner Pacific, and we just made contact with City of San Carlos, and Silicon Valley Clean Water is the next agency that we are going to be contacting and speaking to. But the design on this project was 100% finished, but it was shelved until the sewer work on Shoreway was done. So we're just kind of ramping this project back up, making sure that the corridor that we were using, no one else snuck in there and stuck a utility in there, right? So so far it looks like it's clear. So it's an interesting project. Once the plans are complete, I'll bring it to the board and show it to you because we're actually tunneling under 101. So we're going to be digging pits on either side, tunneling under 101. So it's a project that the district doesn't do very often, if ever. So, and once construction starts, we'll be offering tours with popcorn if you'd like to come out and take a look. So it'll be a fun. Oh, excuse me, the Cohen Tank project, that's also moving forward. The board approved a new structural engineer of record in ZFA. So that's Brandon will be working on getting them going here shortly. And then the transmission main assessment, that's been a little bit of a tough one. The two consultants are really, these guys are really technically, the products that they offer are very technically, are very technical. They're the cameras that they use and stuff that goes through the pipe. It's the technology is really out there, and which is great. We'll get some really good results, but it seems like, you know, talking contract with them and scope of work gets a little, it's a little hard. They really want to just talk about the, you know, what they're going to be doing for us. So long story short, we're still working on trying to get a scope and budget from these two consultants. So it's been a little challenging, but we'll work through it. And then two projects with the city, really no updates on those. Other than the Twin Pines Park detention basin, that's probably going to be an attorney, city attorney to district attorney conversation about easements on the city property and our pipe. So we'll probably provide some more updates on that as it becomes available, and then possibly doing that in closed session, if allowed. So those are my updates. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Yeah, if you need any relationship up, Paul, with Belmont, their deputy department or deputy director of public works used to be my boss in San Mateo,
The city engineer, I met him today, actually.
Brad. Yeah,
Oh, Brad? Yeah, the guy that's filling in.
yeah.
Yeah, really nice
Yeah.
guy. I know Brad pretty well. Yeah, it's nice to have him there. So
To help them out.
Yeah.
so he's
If there's
filling
anything-
until they backfill Tracy's position, who left to go to San Carlos.
Hey, well, until June, he said too, then he's done.
He's been saying that for a while. He keeps saying he's retired and then comes
Well,
back.
I've since in October and he said no, so, you know, we'll see. It's gonna be a battle between the two of them. And Brad doesn't need the money, so.
I think he's coming up on his 800 hours too. Isn't there like an 800 hour limit for a new?
There Just started in March, so he's only working 3 days a week.
That's right. I thought he started in January. That's right. He started in March. Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, if there's any questions, please let me know.
All right, cool. Any questions for Juben? Questions? None? Kirk, anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, thank you. Admin services, Allison?
That's me. So the OM recruitment is going very well. And as of today, that information is a little outdated. So as of today, we have 74 applications for the operations manager position. Out of those 74, we phone screened thus far 6. And we have invited 3 of them to come for in-person interviews. We did receive 1 application after phone screening. That we are going to phone screen next week. And if they pan out, then we'll invite them also for an in-person interview. An update that I didn't put in here that I should have is we did recruit for Ron's position. Ron being our customer service admin specialist. As soon as I posted it, I took it down. It was only posted for about 6 days because I received 134 applicants.
That's a problem I wish I had on my job posting.
So
Including a lot.
a lot of good qualified applicants, from a
Wow.
lot of neighboring public entities.
4-day work week, I was gonna say. is that
I was
what
gonna
it is?
say.
It's the 4-day work week. It's a lot of personal connections. It's a lot of just making sure that everybody knows what a great place Mid-Penn is to work at. So besides the personal emails that I'm getting, all those applications, just going through them, it was a lot. And according to Misty, it's probably the most applications they've ever gotten for any position
Over any period of time.
for any period of time combined.
Probably several positions.
That's what she said for sure.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So we will be going through them and extending invitations for in-person interviews after next week. So we've got our hands full for sure.
Cool, it's a good problem to have.
It is a very good problem to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Very, very good problem to
The
have.
problem was good, but, you know, we'll hope we'll get somebody even better.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yep. I attended our HRA meeting, which is our Human Resources Association. That was actually over at Belmont City Hall, which was great. Nice little walk over there. Their meeting was really nice. They just had their outside district attorney that was there that was just able to answer questions for anybody that might have had questions about, you know, any personal HR issues. What I found interesting there was that they were talking a lot about internal family leave policies that they are implementing, a lot of them as recruitment tools. A lot of them are very interesting that I know that are on our strategic plan that we'll kind of be looking into on our own. And then another thing that I just thought was really interesting, going back to my Folger finds, we are now 38 boxes out of the 60. So we are tugging along. But did you know that, I'm sure you guys probably know because you've been here forever,
Yeah.
but at one point, but at one point,
That implies I'm old.
yeah, well, I mean, you said it, not me. But at one point,
But she agreed right away. They just need to go right away. No hesitation.
That's on you.
right? But at one point, Belmont or Mid-Penn actually sponsored a poetry like contest or fair with the Belmont School District. And this was one of the pamphlets that I found, and there's a sample of a 4th grade poem that I found very interesting. I wonder where this child is now.
It's very dark.
It is. But I thought,
Wow, this kid's had a rough day.
I was like, that was in two thousand
I'm
and one.
glad we saved that.
Where are you?
Sounded inspiring.
Deep thinker, I love it.
Deep, deep thinker, very much so.
Maybe Jack applied
Jack
for
Handy.
Ron's job.
Mhm. Very much.
Ellen, going back to your HR, wasn't there like an HR director group in the Bay Area at one point?
That is this group.
Okay.
So HRA is the Human Resources Association, so it's all of HR directors, admin, services managers, directors, within all public entities, so all cities, and then I joined, and then I brought a few water districts with me. The Harbors Association is also in there, and then some of the fire districts are in there as well now, and let's see, I think that's probably about all for special districts, but it's pretty much every local San Mateo County, city HR, and it's really great
Oh,
to
okay.
just kind
Okay,
of.
I thought when you said that, I thought it was a meeting between us and Belmont, so it was. the
No,
whole-
oh, no, no,
okay.
no, yeah,
Ah, good, good.
yeah, it's all of San Mateo County, cities and, yeah.
All right. Very good.
That was a quick question
Mhm.
on the harassment and other training. I noticed Joanne and I aren't listed.
Oh, yes,
I know I completed, but.
yeah, I have to put you guys on there,
Okay.
thank you for
Just wanna
noting
make
that.
sure we were covered.
Out of compliance.
All right. Any other questions for Allison? None? All right, good. Operations manager, Brennan?
Yeah, on this first page near the bottom, just kind of tagging along to one of the projects you've been described, we're gonna be doing some work, at the Hallmark tanks, some structural work there. So this very last, bullet down there, we were requested by ZFA, the structural engineer, to take some of the structural engineers call coupons, right? So they were 1.5 by 16 long pieces of steel that we had cut out. We had a welder come out there and cut them out, and they wanted 4 of them. So on the first course of metal there, we took 2 of these coupons out. And then the next course up, so within like 10, 12 foot or whatever, we took out these 4 pieces of metal. And we sent them to the lab to analyze to find out what kind of metal they are, maybe what kind of condition they are, because the structural engineer wants to use that to find out, what's gonna be necessary to make those tanks resilient to any seismic events and any other things related to structural engineering. And then after that was done, then we had to go out there and find the metal. We were talking about it this morning. The structural engineer had requested we get this special type of steel,
Schedule 60.
Schedule 60. And so Chris Michaelis, one of our long-term employees, he goes, that stuff is what they make submarines out of, titanium is a real
Nuclear
special
subs
metal.
only.
Yeah, and he goes, the only place that we could find it was down in Southern California near San Diego at some kind of shipyard or something like that, and we can
That
only
works on
buy.
nuclear subs, they build some. subs.
Yeah, it was some great stuff, so we said,
So it was for to patch it again?
to patch it, yeah, we had to put back that string.
Those don't, but they don't ship it, so we gotta drive.
We got that right out of San Diego, yes, we told the structural engineer, really, do we have to get this, special submarine grade type
For
steel?
this little piece?
Well, it's about like this, so it's not that little, but it's about this, that big. So we talked them down off the ledge and we got some other appropriate steel and we had a welder go in there and weld.
Structural engineers, man.
We had a welder come in and weld it, and the welds had to be inspected as well to make sure that there weren't any holes or anything like that that might cause a leak or rust or whatever. And then we just got through painting both the inside of the tank where the patch was taken out and also the outside. And then because the tank's taken down, we've got to go in there and disinfect the entire tank. These are our largest tanks, they're 2.5 million gallons. So they're like, I want to say they're 140 foot in diameter and 25 foot tall, so they're big tanks. And it's an effort. We don't do the disinfection, we hire a contractor because this is what they do. But anyways, we had to disinfect the tank and then, put some water in there and get the water sampled at the lab to make sure there was no bacteriological contamination in there before we could put that tank back in service. But, anyway, so we just did that tank and then eventually we're gonna do the other Hallmark tank, same thing, because again, that's part of the work we're gonna do eventually for both tanks. Right now, we're gonna focus on the north tank at Hallmark, and this is what we did there. Hopefully, maybe if they learn, something good about the metal they took out, they won't make us do it on the south tank, they'll say, because the tanks were built at the same time, I imagine from the same materials,
So
They just made you go get submarine grade steel.
They wanted,
They wanted
they
to.
wanted to.
But, and you think they're now not gonna make you do it?
I won't,
I'm just, that's.
I won't be here, but I'll worry about it.
So the verdict's not back yet.
I haven't seen the report, we haven't seen the report, maybe the structural engineers had it, but we haven't had structural engineers say, hey, this is great or this is bad, so yeah, we don't know.
Battleship only.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know the metal can take it being underwater, so maybe it is kind of submarine grade, right? So it's under 25 foot of water most of the time.
Rolled steel with paint.
Yeah,
Something resistant to radar.
the submarine.
tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I always like to point out to the board is the next page 71 is the USA locations. It just kind of gives an indication of how active construction activity is in the community here. So we had 218 requests in the month of April, which is up from March, but down from January and February. So we're getting kind of an average. It's construction time of the year in the community here. So that's not unusual, but I mean, we have a full-time staff member that his job is to go out there and do the USA locates every day. And Michael's been, giving each of the guys for the most part an opportunity to go out there and do it. So it's just not one guy dedicated to it. We're just kind of rotating through people. And it's a good way for the guys. I say guys because they're all men out there. There's no women yet. But it gives them an opportunity to see where infrastructure is, right? You see it on a map and now you're out there walking it and you're trying to locate where this is. So it gives them a good idea of where things are located. And then the last thing I'll point out is on the very last page, we had another one of our newer employees, Trevor Morris. He's been with us, just about a year now. He passed his T2, which is a water treatment certificate 2 level examination, and he's, signed up to take the D2. So again, kind of getting back that, you know, a lot of our operators are just, going out there and obtaining their certificates. And I think last month I mentioned that we have, the most D3s and now D3s with a T2 certification we ever had. And I can see Trevor going after his D3 when, you know, he gets a little bit more experience. So,
Good.
you know, we're sitting really good. We're sitting really good for operators out in the field, you know, that.
Is there a requirement for them to take these tests? Do they have to have certain years of experience?
Usually require, yeah, a certain amount of experience, you know, in that position before you take the next step.
Exactly, because I mean, you could have somebody who is very good at, you know, retention and taking tests and all of that.
Right, right.
You go in the field and
You can go straight to the D, one D1, go straight to your D2.
You can go straight to D1 without anything,
Yeah,
but
but you can go-
D2.
You go to
You
D2.
can go
You go
to
to
D2, right? Yeah.
you need to have
D3,
some field
D3,
experience.
D3, you have to have experience.
And somebody,
D3.
and somebody will have to sign up
Mhm.
for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's nice now is the operators, they can literally take the test almost any time. I mean, they make it available. When I did it years ago, I mean, they offer the test twice a year, kind of like the engineer exam or something,
Yeah, yeah.
But now they can do it all the time. They get the results right away too. So it's a good thing for the operators.
Good. What else? Anything else?
That's all I was gonna share unless one of the board members has a
Very
question.
good. Any questions for Lena? Is this good? Thank you. So the general manager is done. We don't have director's reports.
I'm done, cool.
So we're done. So the general manager.
I'm done.
Yeah, so I made a mistake on the director's reports, but we can take those under communications, so, we'll do those under communications. So first on my report, we had the employee appreciation dinner. Thank you so much, Vice President Bella and Director Cotton for coming. Talked about it the other day, but it was a wonderful event, so, and
It was.
staff keeps talking about it. Actually, we had our safety meeting this afternoon and usually, so Victor Pung runs our safety our meetings. And so kind of usually it starts with the presentation. And then if, depending on how long the presentation is, we'll do a round of safety Jeopardy and he, you know, he devises all the questions and answers and there's the interactive like Jeopardy program. And so he had printed and cut out some of our heroes to represent our teams. It was very fun. So I'm sure that'll just keep getting used
And Director Cotton was one of the questions.
Uh-oh.
Uh-huh.
They had to name who was the new director that was at the employee
Oh,
appreciation
wow.
dinner.
So we cover like, you know, safety topics and kind of general
And did they get it
system
right?
Yeah.
knowledge.
Alright.
They said, they said Chuck. They didn't say Director Cotton, they just said Chuck.
I think all much.
Pink tags are out.
Yeah.
But that's good, so. And then, I've had a lot of travel recently. So I went to the Aqua JPI Member Summit, which is kind of, you know, tacked onto the Aqua Conference. So a couple things, interesting, they actually, because they've grown their staff so much, you know, through adding services, they've outgrown their existing building, so they just purchased a new building themselves in Roseville, and they'll be remodeling it. Of course, the, you know, cost came up, as discussion, but, they're planning to lease their old building long-term, and they expect there to be, you know, offset most, if not all of the costs of the purchase and remodel. Interesting, there's a long presentation, which I can't say I absorbed all of it because this is a whole new concept. But they're considering the potential of offering parametric insurance cover for disaster-related property liability. And it's a whole kind of
What's
new
parametric?
concept and tool. It's mostly used actually by countries in the developing world. They're starting to adopt it, but so here's a definition of it.
Pretty much.
So parametric, I know, but so parametric insurance, what it is, it's a type of insurance contract that insures the policyholder against the occurrence of a very specific event by paying a set amount based on the magnitude of the event instead of the magnitude of the losses in a traditional indemnity policy. For example, you know, just as an example, a policy that pays $100,000 if an earthquake with magnitude of 5.0 occurs. So it's based on a metric that's, you know, independent, a government agency like USGS earthquake. And, you know, so, you know, what the example they had is like the state is broken up into all these different kind of risk zones, which is based on the magnitude of, you know, the risk of earthquakes in your area. And so depending on your area, that's what your policy pays. And so if you get a 5.0 earthquake and you have damage, we pay out the set amount right away. If you have a 6.0, 7.0, you get this amount right away. So you don't have to, you can start rebuilding, dealing with things right away. You're not going through the process of assessing all of your damage and, you know, while everyone else in the entire region is, right? Because you're just gonna hit major regions. So nobody's sold on it. They're still learning, exploring. It's, I think I'm gonna have to hear the presentations a few more times to really understand how it works myself. But, you know, I do like that they are, you know, really taking, you know, interesting looks.
Sounds like gambling.
That's what I said. Exactly the first thing I thought, I'm gonna bet. It is.
But you know, you're getting coverage for your loss as opposed to, we had a 5.0 magnitude earthquake, we had no damage, but I get $100,000.
We won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No, but exactly, I was gonna ask,
I think
but there has to be
some
some
damage
kind of
happening.
assessment, yeah.
Yeah,
And fires is the same thing, you
Yeah,
know,
so
you could have, you know, 6, 7 houses burned, and the next one is not, so, when that happens.
I
Yeah.
They get a house for
yeah. I mean,
$100,000.
you don't get a windfall if you don't get damage, but it's just, you know, it
Set fires to
speeds
the
up the
houses.
process. It makes it easier somehow to calculate.
You don't have to do all the
insure.
assessments.
But it's certainly gambling on behalf of the insurers
Mhm.
part.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, if they do have like a flyby, a drone, they could easily say damage, no damage. And those that are damaged, will give them at least the set amount, you know, that's probably what, they're gonna do something like that.
yeah, they're looking at it for earthquakes and wildfires, those types of major damage that they can whole region. And it's
Yeah.
just, it's one of the reasons insurance companies are struggling and pulling back and taking away coverage is because they know if one, you know, they're gonna get so many losses there. So it's just, I don't know how the math, how it really works on the back end, but at least, you know, like I said, JPA is progressive. They're really doing whatever they can to figure out how to control their costs, which I appreciate. And we'll watch that process
Yeah.
continue. I gave a little snapshot of the property program coverage structure. So, you know, because we're a risk pool, we're self-insured up to 10 million, and then beyond that, we have these, you know, other underwriters. There was, you know, as all these property claims and all the wildfires and everything happened across the state, a year or two ago, this distribution of how many underwriters looked very different. There was a little bit of chaos where some backed out, and so they had to get, there was just so many different entities, and I think, if I remember correctly, JPIA had to increase our self-insurance amount, so they've been working to consolidate, bring that down, you know, they are fortunately very successful when they really, you know, talk to insurers, hey, listen, this is only water districts. How conservative water districts are, how good we are at planning and mitigating risk, you know, there's been a few instances of wildfires where areas with, you know, water infrastructure have burned and there's been minimal to no damage. So they can look at these exactly like, look, we're not even running wildfire risk. We're great. Insure us. So, you know, they do their sales pitch and they have, it's interesting. They actually have like little kind of like speed dating events, basically, where you have your underwriters and your insurance pools and whatnot, and they sit down and they make their pitch. And then you move on to the next one. You make your pitch. So, whole different world, eh? To learn about every time. Aqua was also wonderful. You know, it's just the best opportunity to connect with colleagues and you know, counterparts across the whole industry. Some good talks, especially the one on wildfire, you know, legal issues. That was really good. It was actually given by Hanson Bridget. So that was great. And one thing I point out and included in here So the local government committee has a work group on paving standards, so they just put together and released their aqua paving standards, best practices for elected officials and agency staff, so I provide that as an attachment. It's nothing, you know, no new information to us, because we've kind of been talking about, thinking about paving standards. Almost every, if not every, water district in the state is dealing with the same thing, cities just really are pushing. Every time you cut into the street, the city wants to pave the whole road, like they just keep pushing and pushing. And it's, you know, just tension for us, so, you know, they had no, the committee had found no magic solutions, right? Like, there's no law clearly defining, so they put together best practices, which, you know, we're really following. It's, you know, coordination between the agencies and trying to get agreement up front and that kind of thing, but it's kind of, you know, it's good to see this in writing. It's another thing to kind of point to. There is talk of working with the League of Cities to propose a legislative, you know, kind of, they call it fix, but really clarification of responsibilities and hopefully to limit our kind of paving scope creep issues. So it's an ongoing issue we'll keep following. So, but I'm glad you're looking at it. It was kind of initiated by Marin Municipal Water District, which covers almost all of Marin County, excluding Novato and then the coast area. So they have, I think 14, 15 cities that they have to work in, and then East Bay Mud, similarly, they have about a dozen cities that they work in. So those two started talking and they were like, we gotta fix this. Cause they have more challenges than we do. Chamber Cemetery Progress Seminar, really great topics, again, very unique setting, different way to engage with folks.
You were up in Sonoma.
Up in Sonoma, Santa Rosa, yeah. So it was a good event. I talked to a lot of people, and really good range of topics and presentations. One thing that, you know, I wasn't aware of that I'm gonna keep an eye on, actually, the tourism one. So there is a big push to bring more tourism to the peninsula specifically. You know, it's kind of known, you know, people come to San Francisco, they come to San Jose, and they just drive through and they don't. So there's a, you know, international campaign, take the exit to, when you're in the area, take the exit and explore peninsula.
Go see what?
The coast, we got good stuff.
Downtown Belmont? I mean, like. That's my point. Oh my God, there's.
This is not my world, but really, the Cow Palace is an absolute premier location for EDM music concerts. They have very special, you know, technology that only a couple of locations in the country have, so it's like one of 3 top places to hold your EDM concert, so they,
Like just a killer bass drop?
I don't know.
Okay.
That concrete.
Lasers and things and, you know, special effects stuff. I've never been one, I don't know. But
You know,
some, people
hotels.
are coming,
The
and then
only,
they go to San Francisco and they're not.
yeah, but the only, you know, decent hotel that we have up in are in Birmingham, basically, you know, the rest of Peninsula.
Decent. 3 or 4 seasons.
Rubber
Well,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, then you have the one here, like the Sofitel and stuff like
there's
that, you
some
know,
nice ones along the
But-
way.
but, you know, you have like a group of good hotels are in Birmingham because of the airport, obviously, you know, so.
So it's something, you know, there is a big push, there's a big effort, there's also the, oh, did I put it in here, did I? The Bay, yeah, I think I deleted that, because I was like, didn't know where to go, where I was writing,
You could go to-
the committee that brings big events, that bringing, the World Cup and, so so what and previously they stand up for the big event and then they shut down and there's just like one person who technically, you know, keeps the books and keeps it running. They've stopped doing that. They're gonna stay engaged and really actively work on pitching and bringing these big sporting events to the Bay Area. So that's another
They
thing. So,
should, they should.
so, you know, we're watching it. Who knows if we turn into this amazing peninsula tourist destination? What does that mean for water use and, you know, how does development shift? And, you know, when we look at Notre Dame, what does that do to Notre Dame? I guess, something else you mentioned is Topgolf and Burlingame. Actually, people love that. So they're thinking like conferences and stuff are coming more to Burlingame because they can add on like events of Topgolf.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge draw apparently.
Yeah.
Always packed up there, it's amazing.
Yeah,
That's what somebody ever thought of. If I got that land for a song too, because it's just.
It's the same thing in Roseville.
Nothing, yeah. They're huge.
So, we'll see, there's definitely an effort being made. Yeah. That's good, I threw in here, a snippet from the letter to the appropriations committee chair of the, presidential budget proposal, about $4.2 billion in funding reduction for the EPA and clean and drinking water state revolving loan programs, et cetera. The whole idea is, states, you need to take care of your own infrastructure. So that's the national trend we're seeing. Good news on the tax exempt bond status. Left. Sorry. What we got? Tax exempt bond status, that is good news.
Same sentiments as Kat.
What we got?
Yeah, that's what we got.
But at least they're not currently going after the tax exempt bond status, the draft, that was submitted to the Ways and Means Committee didn't include changes to that, so. Things could change, but at least we're on the right track on that. More fun, our website has a new addition. So John Davidson worked with Liftoff to add these little quick buttons on the left-hand side, including the search. This was something that kind of bugged me and others I know, that the search was actually only in the very bottom and it's hard to find, so you can find search as well as the other kind of really key things for customers easily. SFPUC, they just got re-rated and both S&P and Moody's held the same rating. So it's good news for the.
Too much AA minus.
It's funny because the press release didn't say, and I didn't research, I think it's AA minus. I know that we're rated higher.
Yeah, I know.
Than SFPUC, but we have a lot less debt than SFPUC has. So, yeah, but they kept it the same, so that's good.
AA minus.
And then, Folger, we talked about Folger, emergency planning, we're gonna participate in a tabletop next week with City of Belmont, they're
Good,
hosting, which is great.
Good.
And then the week after, we have a meeting set up to kind of start this process with, San Mateo Consolidated Fire, Foster City, and Cal Water. Just talk about how, coordinated planning efforts, so it's good that we're engaging in these things. Meeting with Supervisor President David Canapa is been rescheduled for Friday the 30th. So it'll be next Friday, so he'll come to tour the Dairy Lane facility and talk with us some more. Talked about the 30th, Friday the 30th at 10:30 in the morning. So,
May.
yeah, next week. Unless he cancels, because they'd love to cancel.
There's a very good
Send it
chance.
Yeah, so that's all I have listed. Kind of major things, so if there's questions on anything else? Let me know.
All right, good, thank you. Questions for the general manager, report? James, we're good? All right, good, communications? Any?
Director's report.
Director's reports.
You knew that, right? You left it there, So like, what is it? And director's report. Under communication. All right, well, anything? Chuck, anything?
Just say also went to the Aqua Conference, it was extremely informative, very good use of time. It's a lot to take in. I mean, I was pretty blown away by just the number of topics and all the minutiae, so, I felt a little battered by the time I left, a little depressed about a few things, but it's, like, okay. I'm always the dumbest guy in the room, so,
The conference.
it was, very well time spent, I enjoyed it, and,
That was a Monterey, right?
yeah.
And we're still part of Region 5. Do you guys, attend Region 5?
Yes, yeah, we all attended that. Yeah, it was just like an endless litany of update reports from a million people.
Yeah, the Region 5, sometimes at Region 5, they've had like speakers come talk about like Bay Delta issues, and it's been like real neat. This was really just
Yeah.
every committee report.
I kept thinking I'm just going to kill myself.
It was not the most exciting of all the talks attended.
But yeah, I think there was at least a dozen different, I mean, the people that actually were speaking were, you know, presenting interesting stuff, but after a while, it was just like, man, this is a lot. But again, it's just, I'm really learning to appreciate just how complex this entire system is from our small perspective to city, county, state, national. I mean, it's just, it's daunting. And, you know, they had a great speaker from Atlanta that was talking about their water. She was the keynote, water problems and issues and things you never even think of, the giant AI world and what it's doing in terms of water consumption, which I would never have figured those two even relate in any way, shape or form, but they're immensely related. And so there's just a lot. And it was very well.
All right, good. Excellent. Eric, do you have anything?
We had HIA, the representative from the mosquito district, explain what was going on. Then the agenda meeting, the finance committee meeting, and the strategic plan meeting. So a lot of meetings, but not very much new to report. Let's put it that way.
All good, Tom.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. Anything?
Yeah, I also attended Aqua. I want to thank Kat for encouraging me to go to that because it really was a tremendous conference and a lot of people were very impressive. The two big takeaways, one was from the speech from Atlanta, which was and water. And I have to say, in the past decade that I've been in transportation, working on big infrastructure projects and also huge software projects and lots of AI, no one talks about water. I never have a discussion about resources and water planning for any of those large projects I've worked on, so it was a really eye-opening event, and I sort of know what our job is as board members now, is to always say and water.
And water. Good.
So that was good, and then I will second the vote of confidence in the Hanson Bridget presentation. I thought that was one of the most valuable ones at the conference. And the real takeaway for me there was about the defensible space and liability that we have to neighbors and the neighbors may have to us for failing to take care of space. And so that's one thing that's sort of on my mind that, you know, maybe at some point I would love to follow up with our operations manager or our new operations manager on sort of what we're doing there to create defensible space on property that we don't try to control liability there.
Yeah, that's part of where I wanted to do the fire vulnerability assessment.
Yes,
To really.
noted, I saved the strategic plan, so I can put those two together, and then I probably forgot, but yes, thank you. You did it for me.
Excellent. Matt, anything?
Nope.
You good?
I'm good.
All right. That's it. I attended the HIA also, like, Thursday, the agenda meeting and all. When we say the agenda meeting, usually, you know, a few days before the meeting, before the agenda is finalized, the president and vice president meet with the general manager and we go over the agenda ahead of time. So that when you come, you know, and because it, you know, either the president or the vice president could be doing the meeting like we're doing now, you know. But anyways, in the future, probably you'll be involved in that too.
I think Kirk forgot to report out on his cats.
Cats.
They've been very quiet this evening, yes.
I'm surprised,
The lion sleeps tonight.
I'm surprised you mentioned the HIA meeting, how, we learned that, a lot of the peninsula, the Bayside, was considered uninhabitable because of, the dense densest of mosquitoes
That's right. Yeah, yeah.
until the
That
mosquito
was,
district, that's why we're one of the,
that was.
one of, if not the
never,
first
I never knew that one.
mosquito districts in the country.
Who was that lady? She was
Rachel, yes.
Rachel.
very good.
Yeah,
speaker.
Rachel's
amazing.
great.
Yeah, she's very good.
She's a PhD, she's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
I mean, you wouldn't think that, she would, hold an audience, but
No,
She did.
she has been wonderful at city council meetings talking about, we had some bird flu issues in the city and, other concerns, vector concerns. You cannot go too deep for her. She is just a wealth of knowledge,
Yeah.
and she's great with any age group. That's the best. She is so malleable. She's done stuff at the senior center and then for kindergartners, and they're just like locked in.
and everybody in between, yeah. Good. All right, cool. Anything else? Going once? Twice?
We have two closed sessions.
Items.
We don't have to go to close.
We adjourned to
session.
closed session.
We adjourned the closed session.
Second.
They should.
I didn't say adjourn, so
No, you didn't.
I just said it now.
Good night.
They should be
Good night.
pretty quick.
Good night, Jubin.
All right, good night, Juben.
Thank you, Ben.
I don't
Good night,
anticipate
Juven.
report outs. We should be able to go.
But you won't be here.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can say that. Yeah, and if we can.
Kirk, you good?
I'm good.
All right, cool.
So we have no report out from closed session.
Very good. So. We adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirk.
Did you get a new bingo?
All right, good night.
Good night.
When it's.
Close.